Decency feels good. That's the trap. It feels clean. It feels moral. It feels like you're doing the right thing. And that is exactly why it fails in the real world. Because power does not operate on what feels right. It operates on what works under pressure. Most people never learn this because they confuse decency with strength. They believe that being respectful, patient, and understanding will eventually be rewarded. It won't. Not in business, not in relationships, not in hierarchy. Look at how people actually move. They don't respect the one who waits. They respect the one who forces clarity. They don't follow the one who explains. They follow the one who acts without asking. They don't fear the kind person. They fear the person who is calm and willing to walk away. That difference is everything. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wasn't teaching cruelty. He was teaching accuracy. He observed that humans respond not to virtue, but to consequence. In The Prince, he makes it clear. A ruler who relies on goodwill alone is already defeated. Why? Because goodwill evaporates the moment it is tested. Decency assumes cooperation. Power assumes conflict, and conflict always wins. Modern society trains you to be decent because decency makes you manageable. You are taught to explain your intentions, soften your boundaries, justify your decisions, tolerate discomfort quietly. All of this is framed as maturity. In reality, it is obedience with a smile. A decent person is predictable. Predictable people are easy to pressure, easy to guilt, easy to manipulate. This is not accidental. Think about this honestly. Who gets interrupted in meetings? Not the aggressive person, the polite one. Who gets overloaded with work? Not the one who refuses, the one who doesn't mind. Who gets taken for granted in relationships? Not the emotionally unavailable, the one who is always understanding. Decency does not protect you, it exposes you. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this clearly. He argued that much of morality was not born from strength, but from resentment, from people who could not dominate physically or strategically, so they created moral systems that punished dominance itself. They labeled strength as arrogance, boundaries as selfishness, refusal as cruelty, and decency became a leash, not a virtue, a leash. This is why decent people feel confused. They do everything right and still lose. They are loyal and get betrayed. They are patient and get ignored. They are fair and get outplayed. And instead of questioning the system, they question themselves. What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. You were simply trained for a world that does not exist. Power structures reward leverage, not virtue. Leverage comes from scarcity, unpredictability, the ability to say no without explaining the willingness to let others be uncomfortable. Decent people rush to relieve discomfort. Powerful people allow it to exist. That alone changes everything. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The moment you stop being decent, people don't suddenly hate you. They reassess you. They pause. They test you less. They choose their words more carefully. Not because you became cruel, but because you stopped advertising yourself as harmless. Decency is not morality. It is submission disguised as kindness. Real ethics requires strength. Only someone capable of saying no can choose to say yes. Only someone capable of conflict can afford compassion. The rest is performance. And this is where most people panic. They think, if I stop being decent, I'll become a bad person. No, you become dangerous with control. And that is the only position from which respect is possible. This is the point where the herd leaves. They don't want this truth. They want reassurance. But you didn't click this to be reassured. You clicked because something already felt wrong. Because deep down, you know, being decent has cost you more than it has given. It doesn't say, now you are being tested. It watches, it waits, and then it applies pressure. Not dramatic pressure, small, almost invisible pressure. That's how it finds the weak. Power tests you in 3 ways. You will miss all 3 if you believe the test is about morality. It isn't. First test, intrusion. Power always starts by stepping slightly over your boundary. A late message, an extra task, a disrespectful joke disguised as humor, an interruption when you're speaking. Nothing big, just enough to see what you do. Decent people respond automatically. They explain, they soften, they justify, they excuse. They say, it's fine. No problem. I understand. The test is passed, but not by you, by the one applying pressure, because now they know I can go further. Power never respects tolerance. It maps it. Niccolò Machiavelli warned about this precisely. A ruler, he said, must never allow small disorders to grow, not because they are dangerous at first, but because they teach others what they can get away with. Decent people allow small disorders everywhere in their lives, and then wonder why chaos follows them. Second test, demand for explanation. Once intrusion is tolerated, power escalates. Now it wants justification. Why did you do it that way? Can you explain your decision? What did you mean by that? These questions sound reasonable. They are not. They are status probes, because explanation implies one thing. I owe you clarity, and clarity is debt. The moment you explain yourself, you accept a lower position in the hierarchy. You are no longer acting. You are responding. This is where decent people collapse. They believe explaining is respectful. They believe clarity builds trust. In reality, explanation builds permission to judge you. Power does not explain itself downward. It explains only upward or sideways. If someone below you feels entitled to your justification, your position is already compromised. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this instinctively. He saw explanation as a symptom of weakness, not because truth is bad, but because needing approval is fatal. Those who must explain are still asking to be accepted. Power does not ask to be accepted. It assumes relevance. Third test, withdrawal of validation. If intrusion and explanation succeed, power performs the final test. It removes warmth, silence, coldness, delayed responses, emotional distance. This is where most people panic. Decent people rush to repair. They apologize, they overgive, they chase, they try to restore harmony. They interpret withdrawal as a mistake. It isn't. It's a diagnostic tool. Power is asking one question. Will this person collapse without reassurance? If the answer is yes, control becomes effortless. Because now you are no longer dealing with reality, you are dealing with fear of loss. And fear is the cleanest leash ever invented. This is why decent people always lose power struggles without realizing a struggle even happened. They think they are being kind. They think they are being mature. In reality, they are failing tests they didn't know existed. Here is the part that hurts. Power does not punish decency directly. It simply stops taking you seriously. You are still liked, still tolerated, still included, but never feared, never prioritized, never listened to when it matters. You become background. Thomas Hobbes said something brutally simple. In any system without force or consequence, promises dissolve. Decency without consequence is just a promise you cannot enforce. and unenforceable promises invite violation. This is why power respects one thing above all else: the capacity to refuse without explanation. Not anger, not cruelty, not dominance displays, just refusal. Calm, silent, final. That single behavior collapses all three tests at once. Intrusion fails, explanation is denied, validation is irrelevant. Decent people fear this moment. They think refusal will make them bad, lonely, rejected. What actually happens is simpler. The pressure stops, or the relationship ends, which means it was never safe to begin with. Power never fights fair. It tests quietly, it escalates slowly, and it selects for those who do not flinch. If you keep failing these tests, it's not because you are weak. It's because you were trained to mistake compliance for virtue. The next section logically goes even darker. We move from tests to how silence is used as an active weapon. Not spiritually, not aesthetically, but tactically. How silence creates fear without saying a word. Silence is not absence. Silence is control of narrative. Most people misunderstand silence because they think communication is about clarity. It isn't. Communication is about who forces the other to react, and silence wins that battle almost every time. Silence works because the human mind hates uncertainty. When there is no response, the brain fills the gap on its own, not with logic, with fear. Power understands this instinctively. That is why leaders pause before speaking. Judges remain expressionless. Experienced negotiators let silence stretch. They are not being polite. They are forcing projection. The person across from them starts to think, "Did I say something wrong? Am I losing ground? What are they planning?" Silence transfers mental labor to the other side, and whoever is thinking more is losing. Niccolò Machiavelli hinted at this when he warned rulers about appearing too accessible. Accessibility kills mystery. Mystery creates restraint. When people cannot read you, they slow down. They become cautious, and caution is obedience in disguise. Decent people break silence too fast. They feel it as tension and rush to dissolve it. They speak to reassure, to clarify, to prove goodwill. And the moment they do, they give the other side relief. Relief equals advantage. Silence denies relief. That is why it feels cruel to those who are dependent on harmony. But power does not optimize for comfort. It optimizes for position. Sun Tzu wrote that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Silence is exactly that. No argument, no confrontation, no visible aggression, just withdrawal of information, and the other side collapses inward. This is why silence scares people more than anger. Anger is predictable. Anger has a script. Silence has none. When you are angry, the other person knows where you stand. When you are silent, they don't know if you still care, or worse, if you've already decided. Power uses silence in 3 specific ways. If you don't recognize them, you will always lose. First, use silence. As high-status individuals do not rush. They do not respond instantly. They do not explain themselves on demand. They do not fill empty space. Time bends around them. Low-status individuals rush to respond because they fear being forgotten. Silence signals, "I am not dependent on your reaction." That alone rearranges the hierarchy. Second use, silence as test. Silence is often not the move, it is the probe. Power goes quiet to see what you do. Do you chase? Do you apologize? Do you over-explain? Do you try to restore warmth? If you do, the answer is clear. You are emotionally subordinate. Power now knows it can pull the leash and you will follow. Third use, silence as finality. The most dangerous silence is not passive, it is decisive. No argument, no warning, no emotional display, just absence. This is not punishment, this is closure without negotiation. And it terrifies people because there is no way back in. Decent people never use this silence. They feel guilty, they feel rude, they feel obligated to explain. So they keep doors open that should have been sealed, and power keeps walking through them. Here is the uncomfortable reality. Silence is not about manipulation. It is about not overexposing yourself. Every word reveals position. Every explanation lowers leverage. Every emotional disclosure gives the other side material. Silence protects information, and information is power. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow, the parts of yourself you refuse to use because you were taught they are wrong. Silence is part of that shadow. It feels dark because it removes validation, but without it, you are permanently transparent, and transparency is vulnerability. This is why powerful people are often misjudged as cold. They are not cold, they are contained. They do not leak intention. They do not leak emotion. They do not leak strategy. They act and let others react. If you speak first, you explain. If you explain, you justify. If you justify, you submit. Silence breaks that chain. Most people will never master this. They are addicted to being understood, addicted to being liked, addicted to harmony, and those addictions make them predictable. Silence is not absence of communication. It is communication without permission. And once you understand that, you stop fearing awkward pauses, cold gaps, and unanswered messages. You start seeing them for what they are. Leverage. Why? Explaining yourself is the fastest way to lose authority. The need to explain is not intellectual. It is emotional. You explain when you want to be understood. You want to be understood when you fear being misjudged. And the moment you fear misjudgment, you are no longer in control. Explanation is not neutral. It is a submission ritual. Every explanation contains an unspoken message. Your approval matters more than my position. That single signal collapses authority, because authority does not negotiate its existence, it assumes it. Watch how explanation actually functions in real power dynamics. When you explain, you slow down, you expose reasoning, you invite counter-arguments, you give the other side handles, you turn a decision into a debate. And debates are for equals or for those below you trying to climb. Power does neither. This is why explanations are demanded downward, not upward. A manager explains to a board. A leader explains to investors. A commander explains strategy to generals, but never to subordinates who are testing limits. When explanation flows in the wrong direction, hierarchy flips. Robert Greene articulated this clearly in the law, "Never explain yourself." Not because truth is dangerous, but because context can always be twisted. The more you explain, the more surface area you give for attack. And people do not attack what they cannot grasp. Decent people believe explanation clears misunderstandings. In reality, misunderstandings are rarely accidental. Most of the time, they are tools. Someone misunderstands you to pull more information, extract reassurance, weaken your stance, force emotional exposure. If you rush to clarify, you reward the tactic. Power does something else. It notices the misunderstanding and lets it sit. If the other person escalates, now you have information. If they retreat, You have position. Either way, you win without speaking. Here is the rule that separates observers from controllers. Never explain a decision. Only restate it. Explanation invites discussion. Restatement ends it. I decided. This is how it will be. That's not changing. No anger, no justification, no defense, just finality. People mistake this for arrogance. It isn't. It is containment. You are protecting the decision from contamination. This is why powerful people sound repetitive. They are not lacking vocabulary. They are refusing to elaborate. And refusal frustrates manipulators, because manipulation requires access. The fear you feel around not explaining is not fear of being wrong. It is fear of losing connection. But connection that requires submission is not connection. It is dependency. And dependency is the opposite of authority. Here is the final truth. You do not lose power when people dislike you. You lose power when they feel entitled to your emotional labor. Explanation is emotional labor. Silence and restatement are not. Decency taught you to explain. Power teaches you to withstand tension. And the ability to withstand tension without resolving it is the real marker of dominance.